Previously on Practical Research 1. In the previous lesson, we discussed the preliminary parts of the first chapter of your qualitative research. We began with the background of the study, which serves as the overview of the context of the research problem. We then proceeded to the template for the purpose of the study, adapted from Creswell's 2013 format, and after that, the construction of the research questions was introduced, where you also learned about the difference of the research questions between quantitative and qualitative researches. Finally, we talked about the theoretical framework and its components. So this week, we will continue learning about the components of the first chapter, but this time we are going to focus on the importance of the study, the limitations of the study, the definition of key terms, and the organization of the study. And with that, good day, students, and welcome to Practical Research 1, Lesson 5. This is Chapter 1, Part 2. And for this lesson, we have the following objectives. First is to identify the remaining components of the research introduction. Second is to be able to evaluate the soundness of the research introduction. And finally is to create the first chapter of your qualitative research. So in this video, we will focus on the discussion on the following parts. First is the importance of the study. Second is the limitations of the study. Third is the definition of terms. And finally, we have the organization of the study. And the discussion will be supplemented with samples taken from the same research as the one we used in the previous videos. So without much ado, let's begin with the discussion, starting with an overview. Now, in keeping with the content of Chapter 1, which is aimed at providing an overview of the study, we will talk about the other four components, and the first one being the importance of the study. So this part of the research introduction talks about the significance that your study possesses based on the benefits that the people will acquire from it. So basically what you're going to do is to fill in the beneficiaries. You're going to determine who benefits from your study, and then also place the benefits that they will get from your research. So to construct the importance of the study, you need three things. First is the general benefit provided by your research. Second, the beneficiaries. You enumerate the beneficiaries, and you are also going to place their corresponding benefits. So to illustrate the importance of the study, here's a sample. Here, please take note that the general benefit, the first component, is the one in red. The beneficiary is the one in blue, and the benefit is the one in green. Now, for this study, the general benefit is that their research will show the strong impact of the student-centered approach on the development of the students' skill sets and the level of competency in their respective areas of specialization. So the first beneficiary, the first one that will benefit from the research would be the school. Now, please take note that whenever we identify beneficiaries, we always enumerate them in a particular order. And we start from the macro order down to, or the macro beneficiary down to the micro beneficiary. What do I mean by macro to micro? It means that we start with the biggest institution, the biggest group, and then we work our way down to the most specific beneficiary of the research. So the first beneficiary, or the macro beneficiary for this research, would be the school. And what benefit does the school get? Well, the study will inform the school administration if it is essential to implement a campus-wide imposition of a learner-centered teaching approach. So this is the benefit that they will get is more of information or data. Now, for the purpose of this sample, I only made use of one beneficiary. But if you move further down, you will see that from the school, they proceeded to mention the teachers and the students as well. The students being the most direct beneficiary of this study. Granted, that the bulk of the benefit will go to them, because this study is for them at the end of the day. So the next part would be the limitations of the study. And this is the part of the research introduction where you as the researchers will state the elements or the factors which may affect the quality of the research process or of the data itself. Looking back, you might have been introduced to the term delimitation of the study or the delimitation of the study. And it has to be understood at this point that the terms limitation and delimitation are two different terminologies and must not be interchanged. When we say limitation, this refers to the extraneous factors, the external factors which can affect the quality of the research or of the quality of the data that will be collected. However, when we say delimitation, this refers to the boundaries of the study. And this is, in terms of its scope, these are the aspects that the researchers will focus on in as much as the study is concerned. So please do not interchange these two terms because they are very, very different. So to construct the limitations of the study, you need two things. First is the actual limitation. You have to determine the factor. Okay, so factor 1, factor 2, factor 3. And you also have to explain how this factor can affect your research. So to give you an example, okay, the ones in red are the limitations, the factors. The ones in blue are the effects. So the researchers identified time constraints as its first factor. Time constraints implies the duration of the whole research process, the time given to them to complete the research. So why was that a limiting factor? Why is time constraint a factor that can affect the quality of the research? Well, because the researchers at the time were given around 4 months to complete their research, and as such, the quality and depth of the data that they were expecting to collect were not very comprehensive and detailed, because again, they had to complete a research paper in a very short amount of time. Had this been a year or 2 years, then the data would have been a bit more comprehensive, or tads more comprehensive, as compared to simply conducting the research for 4 months. What's the second limiting factor? The second limiting factor that they identified would be the availability and interest of the chosen participants. Now, some of you may have experienced or may have encountered participants who did not want to actively participate in the collection of the data. And these are the kinds of participants who would give you responses such as no comment, I feel fine, my experience was okay. And frankly, these are lackluster responses. And these are less than useful, because not much explanation was given, not much justification or deepening was introduced. Although the researchers have the prerogative to ask follow-up questions, if the participants continue to give very short responses without explaining them, then the quality of the data is now compromised. And the researchers were able to pick up on that. That, okay, should there be participants who would be less than participative, then our data will be compromised, or the quality of the data will be compromised. Okay, now we move on to the definition of terms. So whenever we define a term, we are accustomed to the common practice of getting a dictionary, just browsing through the words and trying to look for what the word means in the dictionary. But that is not the accepted practice in research. Now, instead of looking for the dictionary meaning, we actually go for the operational definition. And what does an operational definition mean? It means that we get or we try to define a word based on how it is understood and how it is used in the research. The researchers will now be the ones to give the definition, not the dictionary. So, why is this so? Okay. Sir, why do we use the operational definition and not the dictionary meaning? Well, because qualitative research is subjective and there might be aspects of the word or there might be certain concepts about the word which are not applicable in the research. Okay? The word simply means another, or the word means differently to other people. And as such, we have to eliminate that diversity in meaning by establishing how you as the researchers understood the term. And as such, create a common understanding between yourselves and the people reading your study. So what's one example? Okay, so allow me to illustrate. For this research, they first defined student-centered approach. Now, there is an accepted definition of the student-centered approach. There are also other definitions of the student-centered approach. It depends on who you ask. Okay? But for the purpose of this research, the proponents or the researchers defined student-centered approach as the child is the active participant at the center of the learning process and the teacher serves as the instructor and the student's guide. That way, you are now giving your readers an idea that this is how we understand the term and this is how you should understand the term as you proceed through this study. Okay, so again, you create a common understanding. We do not welcome diverse interpretations because that will lead to miscommunication and misconceptions about your study. Instead, we tell your readers that this is how we understand the term and this is how you're supposed to understand the term from here on out. There are other terms that you can define in your research. In fact, most of the terms that you are supposed to define are the terms or the key terms found in your research title. Okay, so since the first thing that your readers will see in your research is the title, then might as well define those terms to make your research title more understandable to your audience. Okay, so finally we have the organization of the study. And this is the last part of chapter 1. Now, in my opinion, after or aside from the purpose of the study, this has got to be the easiest part to write. Because what you are required to do is simply to place the discussion of the content of each chapter found in your research proposal. Now, in common practice, the research proposal is composed of 3 things. Okay, your chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. So all you need to do is place the contents of chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then you're good to go. That will be the component of the organization of the study. And to illustrate, here is a sample paragraph pertaining to the contents of chapter 1. Now, since this content is quite lengthy, I will allow you to pause this video at this point and just read through the contents. And once you've done that, you are also going to place the content for chapter 2 and chapter 3, which we will be discussing in the next videos. Okay, so for this portion, you're only going to give your readers an idea of what to expect in the succeeding chapters or the succeeding pages in your research. And with that marks the end of the first chapter of your qualitative research and the end of this video as well. I hope that this video has been helpful to you, and I will be seeing you in the next lecture video, in the next tutorial video, which will talk about chapter 2 or the review of related literature. Once again, this has been Sir Dardar, wishing everyone a great day ahead. Goodbye, class dismissed.